He thought one speech would finish her. One public confession, one younger mistress, one cruel declaration, and Claire Sterling would disappear quietly into disgrace. But he never expected her brother to become her shield, her witness, and the force behind her comeback. This is the story of a woman left with nothing in a ballroom full of enemies, who learns to fight with fire, loses everything again, and still finds a way to come back stronger.
7 months pregnant, at the Sterling Foundation Gala, Claire's world imploded on live television. Her husband wasn't just the keynote speaker, he was the scandal. During his speech, he announced his affair with a brilliant executive from his firm, and that she was also carrying his child. Richard Sterling was sure his wife, Claire, would crumble. He never imagined her brother would orchestrate her comeback, nor did he foresee the battle for the family empire she would wage, the day she'd lose everything again, and the fury that would fuel her revenge. This is Claire Sterling's story, a woman who faced public ruin and learned to fight back with fire. A spotlight blinded her. The air rushed from her lungs. Her hand flew to her stomach. Where their son kicked, a tiny tremor in the chaos. "What is he saying?" Claire whispered, certain she'd misunderstood. The collective gasp from Chicago's elite echoed the shock in her heart. Something was terribly wrong. For months, she'd felt him pulling away, the endless international calls, the way his eyes were always on financial reports, never on her. A reporter shoved a phone in his direction. "Richard, for the Tribune?" he shouted. His eyes swept the stunned ballroom and found hers. For one horrible second, the world stopped. He owned the stage, a titan of industry caught in his own trap. The city's most powerful families held their breath. The orchestra's soft music played on, a bizarre soundtrack to the ruin of her life. The face she'd loved for 6 years, twisted into a stranger's cruel mask. "Is this a joke?" she asked her brother. "Did you know?" Richard's voice boomed from the speakers like a demolition order. The room went silent, frozen by his words. "Anya and I are building a new dynasty," Richard announced. Claire choked out a broken, disbelieving laugh. "A sick joke, Richard. Very funny." "That is my announcement." His tone was flat, as if discussing a property acquisition. "Our arrangement is concluded, Claire." Her phone buzzed relentlessly in her purse. She saw him exchange a triumphant look with someone in the wings, a victory she wasn't a part of. "Richard, we're at a charity event," Claire pleaded, her hand shielding their unborn baby. "My family is here, our partners. I am 7 months pregnant. This isn't real." "It is." Richard's eyes finally met hers, no longer a comfort, but a cold, empty void. "Anya is pregnant too. She's giving me a son, and I've made my choice." The words hung in the vast space, a final, brutal judgment. Claire heard the sound, but her mind refused to accept the meaning. Anya. The name was legendary in global real estate. Anya Petrova, a sharp, relentless deal-maker who had taken the city by storm, 28 years old with a killer instinct and a smile that secured billion-dollar projects. The woman who was always at the same events, standing just a bit too close to Claire's husband. "What are you talking about?" Claire's question was drowned out by the rising murmur. "Anya?" Richard said, the name like a prayer. "We have been partners for 2 years. She understands my ambition. She fuels it. And she is giving me the air I require." 2 years. The words pounded in Claire's head. 2 years of deceit. 2 years with a man who was constructing another life behind her back. "But I'm having your baby," Claire's voice broke. "Our son. After all the doctors, all the heartache." "That child was a legacy asset," Richard declared, his voice carrying to every reporter. "A succession plan I assumed was being managed correctly. Apparently there was a flaw in the execution." Managed correctly. The business jargon was a slap in the face. What did he mean? She looked at her husband and finally understood the man he was. How had she never seen the predator behind the visionary? Richard Sterling was built for takeovers. The heir to a Chicago real estate empire, he learned early that emotion was a liability, not an asset. Feelings were inconvenient. People were properties to be developed or demolished. His formidable mother taught him that dominance was everything, while his father only acknowledged his net worth. By 20, Richard knew love was a transaction and marriage was a strategic alliance. The surest way to power was to fake a connection, extract its value, and then liquidate it without a second thought. Claire had been his most valuable acquisition. Her respected family name gave his ruthless ambition a veneer of class. She was the perfect facade for a man who felt nothing but the drive to win. For a moment, at the beginning, he almost let himself feel something real. He quickly corrected that weakness. It was a risk. It was inefficient. So he managed his life with the cold logic that everyone, including his wife and their unborn child, was ultimately expendable. I don't understand. Tears streamed down her face. Richard, please, whatever is happening, let's just go home. We can talk. There's nothing to talk about. Richard gestured to Anya, who walked toward him through the shocked crowd. The act was a public execution. Our marriage was an initial investment. Your family's influence got me the zoning approvals I needed. You served your function. Her hands shook as she watched his new life take the stage. Her fingers felt numb. Richard, please don't. Claire was sobbing now, her private hell a public spectacle for hundreds of phones. You're destroying us. Our baby. That is no longer my concern. He took Anya's hand. The door to their shared life had just been slammed shut and locked. Camera flashes exploded, a merciless storm burning the image into her memory. "The build or be demolished," he murmured, as security guided her away. "Honestly, your future is irrelevant to me." Claire stumbled backward, her legs giving out. A brutal pain ripped through her, far worse than a broken heart. The stares of the crowd felt like a physical attack. Her brother grabbed her arm, pulling her from the ballroom. "Wait! My bag! My phone!" she cried. "Richard, wait. I have nothing left." On the large screens in the foyer, she saw him posing with Anya, his hand resting on her stomach. He was smiling, looking like a man who'd just closed the deal of a lifetime, not one who'd just annihilated his pregnant wife on camera. His black town car pulled up to the entrance. The engine purred as Richard drove off into the rainy night. The taillights were two indifferent red embers. Then they disappeared. Claire stood on the sidewalk, the cold Chicago wind cutting through her gown, leaving her shivering and utterly alone. This isn't real. The thought was a desperate prayer to undo the last 10 minutes. He wouldn't do this. It's a nightmare. Any second, his car would return. He'd come back for her. But the street remained empty. There was only the rain and the sound of her own ragged breathing. He was gone. The truth hit her like a physical blow, and she collapsed onto the wet pavement. She ran through the downpour, the hem of her expensive dress catching on the wet leaves. Her thoughts were a frantic loop, playing Richard's cold smile over and over. The blueprints in his study were never just for skyscrapers. They were the plans for a life he was creating with Anya. Her hands cradled her belly, trying to protect their son. The damp chill seeped into her bones. She had to survive. For the tiny life inside her who knew nothing of this betrayal. Just a little longer. She had to make it. Protecting him was her only purpose now. The rain fell harder, washing away her path, swallowing her in the dark. The designer heels, perfect for the gala, were now instruments of torture. A deep chill settled in her bones. The cashmere wrap, a gift from him, was useless against the wind. It was all a lie, just like their marriage. Then, a light cut through the storm, a warm yellow glow, a beacon in the darkness, a house. A desperate primal hope pushed her forward. Her muscles screamed, her lungs burned with each cold breath. The light resolved into a sturdy brownstone, smoke curling from its chimney. It was the opposite of their cold glass penthouse. It looked solid, real. She fought her way up the stone steps in a final, agonizing push. She felt herself giving up. A strange, quiet warmth spread through her limbs. A final, cruel trick of her body. The urge to just lie down in the wet leaves and sleep was overwhelming. Just get to the light. She reached the bottom of the porch stairs before her legs gave way. She crawled the last few feet. The heavy oak door had a large brass handle. Her fingers were too numb to grip it. Claire slumped against the wood, the rough texture of final connection to the world. So this is how it ends. She had tried to escape. She fought for her son. "I'm so sorry, little one," she whispered. Mommy tried. As her vision blurred, she heard a lock turn, and a man's sharp, concerned voice cut through the rain. "Claire, what in God's name happened to you?" A strong arm pulled her from the storm. She felt the solid warmth of her brother's body just before the world went black. She woke to the heat of a roaring fire and the heavy comfort of a wool blanket. Kind hands were rubbing her own frozen ones. "Take it easy. You're here now. You're safe." The voice was a low, steady rumble, the complete opposite of Richard's sharp, demanding tone. This was the sound of family. Claire's eyes fluttered open to a flickering scene of a cozy living room and firelight. "You're safe." Her brother's face came into focus, his expression lined with worry. "David," her voice was a dry rasp. "You're at my house," he said, tucking the blanket around her. "You collapsed on my doorstep a minute ago." Maria, his wife, came over with a hot mug. Claire tried to sit up, but the room spun. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and she sank back into the plush armchair. "Whoa, not so fast. You're in shock." His worried eyes told her everything. Her brother cared more about her than her husband ever had. "The baby, is he all right?" A knot of fear tightened in her stomach, making it feel solid and heavy. "I haven't felt him kick. Hang on," Elena said, returning with a small Doppler. "I kept this from my last pregnancy scare. Just listen." She guided Clara's hand to the right spot on her belly. With a shaky hand, Clara placed the earbuds in. A frantic, galloping sound filled her ears. A strong, consistent rhythm. "He's there!" she cried, the relief washing over her. "He's okay. He's a Vance," Elena said softly. "Stubborn, like his mother." Elena returned with a steaming mug. "The guest room is ready for you." Elena was a woman who commanded boardrooms, sharp and composed. As she helped Clara sit, the apartment came into view. It was a classic pre-war space with a grand marble fireplace. The furniture was a mix of antique and modern, and the walls were lined with law books and modern art. This was a home built over time, not staged. The air smelled of old books and brewing tea. "Drink this," Elena urged. The hot peppermint tea felt like life seeping back into her. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was a little stronger now. "Thank you both. I didn't know where else to go." "This is always your home," Elena said, her tone absolute. "The blizzard has shut down Lakeshore Drive. The entire city is on lockdown." "I have to call someone," Clara said, fresh panic rising. "I ran out without my purse, my phone, nothing." "The old landline in the study works," Elena said. "The cell towers are overloaded, but that line is solid." Clara stared at the antique phone. Leo had systematically isolated her from her old life. She had no one left except the sister she'd allowed him to alienate. "Tell me exactly what he did." Elena's voice was quiet, analytical. "How do you end up on my doorstep in a blizzard? 8 months pregnant in a gala gown." Clara looked down at her ruined designer dress. It was Leo. His name felt like ash in her mouth. He was supposedly at a developers summit in Aspen. She took a ragged breath. "I was looking at the firm's social media, and I saw her, Maya, wearing the necklace. Then the photos from the ski lodge reception were posted on their corporate page. The silence in the apartment was heavy. The wind howled outside. The radiator hissed. "He's with your junior architect." Elena's voice was like ice. "Your husband is in Aspen with Maya, while you're here carrying his son." "Yes," Clara breathed. The sheer public nature of it was a unique torture. "That's not just an affair. That's a strategic demolition," Elena said, her words clinical and harsh. The tears she had held back finally broke free, silent tracks for a life that was now a smoking ruin. Elena was beside her in an instant, her arms providing a sudden solid comfort. "Oh, you poor thing." Elena's voice was tight with rage. "What kind of man does this? And what kind of employee has the nerve?" Clara wept into her sister's shoulder, mourning the man she thought she had married and the empire he had just imploded. "I'm so sorry," she choked. "I'm a disaster. I'm barging in on you. You have zero to apologize for," Elena said, her back to Clara as she gazed out at the snow-swept city. "What they did was a breach of every contract, personal and professional. You're not a disaster. You're a witness." She saw her sister offering legal steel when all she felt was shattered glass. "Why are you so nice to me?" she asked, her voice broken. "After I let him push you out of my life?" Elena turned from the window, her eyes meeting Clara's. "Because you're my sister. That bond is stronger than any prenup. You're my family." The past was irrelevant now. "I have the guest room prepared." "You're not going anywhere," she declared. "The city is officially snowed in. Nothing is moving for at least 2 days." "I can't be a burden," Clara started. "The city is closed." Elena's tone was non-negotiable. "There is nowhere else you can safely be, so you will stay here. You'll get some rest, and you will let me take care of you and my nephew." Clara had no strength left to argue. Her entire world was in pieces, and her baby needed safety. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how I can ever repay you." "Repay me by making sure that boy grows up knowing his own strength," Elena said. "Make what Leo did a footnote, not a headline." She headed toward the kitchen. "Don't worry about her," Clara's father said softly from the doorway. "She's just furious on your behalf. It broke her heart when you married Leo and just disappeared," Elena said softly, as they walked down the hall. The walls were covered with family portraits. "How did you two meet?" Clara asked, needing a distraction. After he quit the firm, Elena smiled. "He decided he'd rather build furniture than legal arguments. He's the worst." She stopped at a familiar oak door. "This place used to be so loud," she said with a sad smile. "Especially when you were home from college. It got so still after you left." She pushed the door open, revealing a room bathed in gentle light. The walls were a pale blue, and in the corner sat an elegant, antique bassinet, a family heirloom. Plush cashmere throws were folded on a bed with an ornate iron headboard. A large bay window looked out onto the swirling chaos of the snowstorm. "The ensuite is through there," Elena pointed. "Let me get you one of Mom's old silk robes. You two were about the same size. Before the little guy, anyway. I'll bring some tea." Her smile was a small anchor, a maternal warmth Clara had forgotten existed. "You need to sleep. Dr. Miller is coming over as soon as the plows clear our street. Everything feels more manageable in the daylight." Elena left, pulling the door closed behind her. Clara was alone in the sanctuary of her childhood room, a refugee from a gilded cage, abandoned by her husband, trapped by a blizzard at 32 weeks. Pregnant with the heir her husband now saw as a liability. She went to the window, feeling the storm's deep rumble through the floor. Outside, the snow was a blinding, violent vortex. She had to voice the betrayal to make it real. "I wasn't imagining it." Her breath clouded the cold glass. "He actually did that. Leo really left me there and shut off his phone. He looked me in the eye and walked away. He felt nothing at all." The baby gave a sudden, sharp kick. Clara hugged her belly. Her breathing hitched. "Okay, little one, it's on us now. Your father has left the building. The life he promised was just a proposal. But we are here. We are safe. And we will find a way through this. I have no idea how, but I swear to you, we will." The baby kicked once more, a steadier, reassuring thump, a silent promise in return. Clara almost smiled, for what felt like the first time in an eternity. Perhaps they could. The knock came at precisely 7:05 a.m. Clara knew because she had been staring at the digital clock all night. Sleep never came. Each time she shut her eyes, she saw Leo's cool, impassive expression. So she watched the minutes crawl by. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. The world beyond the glass was a maelstrom of white. "It's open," she called, her voice hoarse. The door swung inward to reveal a man in his late 50s, whose salt and pepper hair gave him an air of calm authority. His face showed both wisdom and kindness, and his observant eyes seemed to take in everything at once. He held an old-fashioned leather doctor's bag that looked as if it had weathered many such storms. "I'm Dr. Miller." He placed the bag on a chair. "I convinced a city plow to clear a path for me. I trust this counts as a house call." A faint smile touched Clara's lips, despite it all. "It does, more than you know." "Excellent." Dr. Miller took out a stethoscope. "Let's have a listen to your co-pilot. Elena said you had a rough evening. That's one way to describe it." His checkup was reassuringly thorough. He checked her blood pressure twice. He timed her pulse for a full 60 seconds, a world away from her usual rushed appointments downtown. Her temperature was normal, and he skillfully located the baby's heartbeat, leaving the Doppler on for a long, comforting minute. How far along? 32 weeks and 3 days. And you were in that stressful situation for how long? Would you say? Several hours, I think. I lost track of time. Doctor? Dr. Chen set her bag down. She took Ellie's wrist, her fingers resting on the pulse point. The doctor's calm focus made Ellie's heart pound harder. What is it? Ellie's voice was thin. Is the baby okay? His heart rate is elevated, Dr. Chen said, her face unreadable. It's not critical, but after a shock like this, we need to monitor for fetal distress. What does that mean for us? The primary concern is premature labor, she stated, looking directly at Ellie. Intense emotional distress can initiate contractions. I have to be blunt. You could go into labor in the next 48 hours. If there are issues, you must be at a hospital. And that's impossible right now. A high-risk delivery needs a neonatal ICU, specialists, and an operating room, none of which exist in a penthouse during a blizzard. Dr. Chen sighed softly. I've handled routine births everywhere. This is anything but routine. Ellie stared at the ceiling as her world splintered. The main roads, she whispered. Are they open? The storm has everything shut down for another day at least. After that, emergency crews have priority, so you'd be waiting another 12 hours before they clear civilian traffic. The doctor's voice softened. Realistically, we're talking 2 days. Best case, to get you to a proper facility. And if he comes before that, I will do everything in my power to deliver your son safely. I have medication that might delay labor. I have a full emergency kit and 20 years of experience. She patted Ellie's hand reassuringly. I'm telling you this so you're aware of the stakes. The best thing for you and the baby is to remain calm and rest. Let your body recover. What if he needs more than that? We will handle that if it comes. I've delivered babies in worse situations. It isn't perfect, but we can manage. Dr. Chen stood, repacking her bag with practiced ease. For now, you stay in this bed, drink fluids, and eat what the housekeeper brings. And I want you to call me for any reason, the smallest cramp, a change in his movement, anything. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. At the door, Dr. Chen hesitated. Your husband, Leo, contacted me earlier. He offered his side of the story. Her voice grew cool. I've been the private physician for many prominent families in Chicago. I've seen messy divorces and bitter inheritance fights. But what he is doing? She trailed off, shaking her head. This is a special kind of calculated cruelty. He wanted me to be trapped here with you. Ellie's voice was flat, empty of emotion. It made the situation feel terribly real. He nearly succeeded. Dr. Chen met her gaze. I know what it looks like when someone is at their limit. I saw that look on you. You were right there, Ellie. Another hour of that kind of stress could have triggered a true medical emergency. But I'm here now. You're still here, and your little boy is strong, just like his mother. No matter what, you've already proven your resilience. Dr. Chen gave her a firm, supportive nod. Whatever that man told you, whatever story he spun about you being too fragile, was a lie. You survived a betrayal that would shatter most people. That isn't weakness, that's power. The door clicked shut. Ellie lay in the sterile, oversized bed, focusing on the simple act of breathing. In, out, trying to calm her frantic heart, to release the tension gripping her muscles. Her son was in danger. There was no hospital, just a doctor and a 4-wheel drive against a blizzard. And outside, the storm raged on. If anything went wrong, she could lose him. Here, in this beautiful glass cage. And Leo was in Singapore with his partner, Isabel, likely celebrating their future without a thought for her. Just then, the tablet on the nightstand, connected to the building's backup satellite internet, chimed. The sound was sharp. In the quiet room, Ellie was in her room with the housekeeper, who was trying to get her to drink some broth. Her stomach was a tight knot of dread that rejected the idea of food. But the woman was persistent. You have to eat, ma'am. For the baby. He needs you to be strong. The notification was a calendar invite from a design firm she didn't recognize. Before she could dismiss it, the penthouse's landline rang. The housekeeper answered. Ellie watched her face shift from professional courtesy to confusion, and then to a simmering anger. "One moment," she said, her voice tight. "Let me check if she is available." She held the phone out to Ellie, her eyes wide with alarm. "It's a man named Marcus. He says he's your brother, and he's been trying to reach you all morning. He sounds frantic." "Marcus." Ellie snatched the phone. "Hello?" "Ellie, my God. I was starting to think—" Marcus's voice was a rush of pure relief. "I've been calling everyone. I called Leo's new office, the building manager. Everyone. They all gave me the same line about you being on a digital detox and unavailable. Where are you? What's going on? Where is Leo?" "I'm okay." Ellie's voice cracked, betraying her words. "I'm safe. I'm at the Chicago penthouse. Leo brought me here to get some rest." "Rest? Ellie, what is he playing at? He's posting old pictures of you two in Greece, calling it a surprise getaway. He told my assistant you were suffering from exhaustion and had to be taken somewhere private. Is any of that true?" "He's lying." The words came out cold and hard. "He brought me here yesterday. He told me Isabel, his lead investor, was also expecting a child, and that his legacy had to be protected." A dense, cold silence stretched over the line. Ellie could hear Marcus's sharp, controlled breathing. Then his calm broke. "I will destroy him." Marcus's voice was pure steel. "I am going to find that sociopathic snake, and I am going to dismantle his entire company, one investor at a time. Then I'll bury him in so much litigation he'll forget his own name." "Where is he? Is he with her? With Isabel, the venture capitalist carrying his other child?" "I know." Marcus's tone was now glacial and methodical, far scarier than his rage. "I know all about Isabel, and a lot more. I started making calls when his assistant blocked me. I pulled some records. I found the financial transfers he tried to bury." "What did you find?" "You're going to want to sit down, Ellie. Just tell me." Marcus inhaled sharply, his voice dropping to an icy whisper. "Leo liquidated your joint investment portfolio this morning. He wired the entire sum, almost $4 million, into a blind trust offshore." Ellie gripped the headboard as the room tilted. That awful feeling of freefall came rushing back. "The condo?" Marcus's voice was relentless. "That beautiful place in Boston you spent a year designing. Your name was never on the deed. He had you sign the closing paperwork as a corporate witness, not a co-owner. It's a common type of fraud. The partner believes they are buying property, but they are just signing off on the transaction, waiving any claim. That's impossible. I signed it. You signed the witness line. It's deliberately placed near the owner's signature line to fool someone who implicitly trusts their partner." Marcus's voice finally cracked with anguish. "Elle, I am so sorry, but it gets much worse." "How could it be worse?" "He finalized the sale of the Boston condo last week, before he even brought you to Chicago. The money was wired through a shell corporation. He planned to erase your entire life in one weekend." Ellie couldn't speak, couldn't draw a breath. The stunning penthouse suddenly felt like a mausoleum. "There's more." Marcus paused, his voice choked with fury and grief. "Isabel wasn't some recent affair. They have been partners for over 5 years, since before he met you. I found offshore accounts, properties registered to her, flight manifests showing them together. He was building a completely separate life with her while he was living one with you. 5 years. The number spun in Ellie's head. 5 years sharing a home. 5 years building what she thought was their life. 5 years with a man who was meticulously planning to ruin her. But this last thing," Marcus's voice broke. "Oh, Elle, this is the cruelest part. Do you remember when Mom's foundation was about to collapse 2 years ago, and an anonymous donation saved it at the last minute? That was Leo. It was a play to get you to move your inheritance into a joint fund he controlled. He had his lawyer contact my office this morning to rescind the grant, claiming gross financial mismanagement. He's trying to tarnish our mother's memory to cover his own fraud." The phone slipped from Ellie's grasp, clattering against the marble floor. Marcus's voice was a tinny echo from the fallen receiver. "Ellie. Elle, are you there?" Say something. But she couldn't move. Dr. Chen was by her side in an instant, gently guiding her to a chair. She held a glass of water to Ellie's lips. Breathe, my dear, the doctor said softly. Whatever it is, you must breathe for your son. Focus on your baby. Ellie's lungs finally obeyed, pulling in shuddering, sharp breaths. Each one was a new wave of pain. Leo hadn't just cheated. He had architected her downfall from the very start. Her career, her money, her home. It was all an elaborate stage he'd built to keep her content, a secondary character in his real story. She had bought every lie, cherished every empty word, and loved a man who saw her as an asset to be liquidated. Dr. Chen picked up the phone. Her conversation with Marcus was brief and efficient as she got his number, promising to update him. Chloe sat with Sophia in the silent den, the city lights blurred by her tears. In that moment of utter betrayal, her composure finally cracked. The pains began at twilight. She wrote them off as anxiety, not real labor. But they sharpened, becoming relentless. David, Sophia's venture capitalist brother, had their private doctor on a call instantly. Contractions were 5 minutes apart. Chloe braced against the marble fireplace. It's too early. This is all wrong. An immense shock can trigger the body's final command. Dr. Sharma, listen to the baby's heart. A bit fast, but solid. We need to observe. Can you stop it? We can try, the doctor assured her. We'll do everything in our power. They helped Chloe into the guest suite, already set up with fresh linens and medical supplies. David brought in supplies, his expression grim, but his actions efficient. He moved with the assuredness of someone used to managing crises. What else? He asked the doctor. Just be here. I might need you. Her attorney, Miss Albright, was still 2 hours out, carrying a flash drive that contained Marcus's complete downfall. And Chloe was trapped in the middle, 33 weeks along in a house owned by a near stranger. If I don't make it, she choked out, her voice strained. You must promise me something. Make sure Albright buries Marcus for this. He cannot win. You will make it. David's tone was absolute. You're far too strong to quit. But if I don't, just promise. He held her hand. My sister wouldn't have brought you here to let you fail. That's not who we are. Chloe almost managed to smile before another contraction seized her. Just promise my girl will know I fought for her. I swear, David said, his own eyes glistening. But you are going to be the one to tell her. You're not going anywhere. The next hours were a chaotic mix of agony and sheer will. The labor was unpredictable, pausing for an hour, granting a brief rest, then returning with a vengeance every 5 minutes. Dr. Sharma used her portable kit to monitor them both. The labor has stalled, she announced late into the night. That's a good sign. Your body is protecting the baby. Let it. How long can this last? There's no way to tell. Hours, a full day maybe. Every hour we buy is a victory for your daughter. Dr. Sharma listened again. This little one is a fighter, she whispered. Takes after her mother. David remained in a chair by the window, a quiet sentinel. He never slept, just watched over them. You don't have to do this, Chloe said in a quiet moment. I'm not leaving, he stated, his voice final. When my sister's life imploded, I stayed with her for days. I heard every sob. I was there when she finally stood up again. That must have been awful. It was, he admitted, and it was the most important thing I've ever done. He met her gaze in the dim light. No one should ever have to fight a war like this by themselves. Whatever comes next, you are not alone. Hot tears streamed down Chloe's face. She had been abandoned so many times. By her parents, taken too soon. By Marcus, whose love was a performance. And now this man, a stranger navigating his own family's past, vowed to stay. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, he said with a faint smile. Thank me when you're holding your daughter. Marcus Sterling is facing a federal inquiry, and you've taken back your future. Is that possible? Yes. His confidence was a tangible force. I see what you've endured. I think you can do anything. At 6 a.m, the real labor began. The baby was coming. Dr. Sharma was a portrait of calm, giving quiet orders to Miss Albright, who had arrived and seamlessly become her assistant. Adjust your position. Suck on these ice chips. Breathe. A small dose of medicine that only dulled the sharpest edges. The baby is ready, Dr. Sharma announced. She's in position. It's time to push. It's too soon. Chloe's voice trembled with fear. I'm only 32 weeks. 32 weeks is early, but not a catastrophe. Babies born at this stage do very well with proper care. The doctor looked directly at her. I've delivered hundreds of premature babies. Most are adults complaining about their mortgages now. Your daughter's going to be fine. Another contraction hit like a tidal wave. Chloe cried out, her nails digging into David's palm. Breathe, he said. Look at me. We count. 1, 2, 3. His voice was her only anchor. She locked her eyes on his, matching his rhythm. Good, Dr. Sharma said as the pain subsided. You're moving very fast. This little one is eager to join us. The next hour was a primal battle. Push, breathe, rest, repeat. Chloe was running on pure adrenaline, her world reduced to this one vital mission. And then, the cord. It's around her neck. The words cut through the haze. Chloe saw a flicker of alarm in the doctor's eyes. Dr. Sharma's tone was firm. Do not move, Chloe. Her hands worked with a swift, terrifying pressure. Panic rose in Chloe's throat, stealing her breath. One last push, the doctor commanded. Everything you have left, now! Chloe screamed, pouring every last ounce of her strength into it. A sudden complete silence descended on the room, a horrifying quiet where a cry should have been. And then, a sharp, angry wail pierced the tension, the most beautiful sound Chloe had ever heard. She's a girl, Dr. Sharma said, her own voice heavy with emotion. A perfect, strong, and very vocal little girl. They placed the baby on Chloe's chest, a tiny, warm weight. Chloe just stared at her daughter's dark hair and miniature fists. Hello? Chloe whispered, her voice cracking. Hello, Lily Grace. I'm your mom. I will always protect you. The baby's eyes opened, a deep sapphire blue, already gleaming with a fierce spirit. She's a miracle. David's voice was full of awe. A complete miracle. Lily Grace Sterling, Chloe said softly. Lily for my grandmother, and Grace for the new beginning she represents. Marcus made a strange, choked sound, a cross between a laugh and a sob. He extended a shaky hand toward his daughter's face. My mother would have adored that, he said. Dr. Sharma let them have the moment. 6 pounds, 1 ounce, she announced. A little early, but she's a powerhouse. Her vitals are perfect. She truly is a little miracle. A true San Francisco miracle, David added from the doorway, his own eyes shining. Arrived right on schedule. 2 days later, Chloe's world had shrunk to that quiet hospital room. The nurses sensed the shift in the air when Marcus walked in, his expression a carefully neutral mask. Mrs. Sterling. David stood as Marcus approached the chair where Chloe sat. I'm David Chen. This is a private conversation. We have some troubling information about your husband. I have my own, Chloe said, her gaze fixed on the skyline. Lily asleep on her chest. I was about to tell my lawyer everything. Chloe explained it all. How she found when the hidden photo stream, syncing to the cloud, while setting up a family account. Marcus's tablet, supposedly wiped after a trip, came to life with images of him in Bali. She described finding the jeweler's e-receipts and the shell companies he used to funnel money from Nexus Dynamics. She told them how he isolated her from her architecture firm, making her dependent while funding his other life. When she finished, her lawyer's face was stone. This is a classic dissipation of assets, Miss Albright said. Calculated corporate fraud. He made you defenseless while you carried his child. Can you prove it? We have the server logs from the tablet and the encrypted drive. He never knew I found it. His private jet's flight logs match her travel blog dates perfectly. The money transfers form a clear pattern. The lawyer's expression hardened. The evidence is undeniable. We have the petition ready to go. He's been posting photos, calling me his soulmate. We saw, Miss Albright said. Those posts are a gift in court. His digital life proves his public persona is a lie. He claimed he was at a coding summit. The records show he was financing an affair. What now? We serve him. He is giving the keynote address at the Innovate SF conference at the Fairmont. Our process server will be waiting. Miss Albright stood. I've been a family attorney for 20 years, Mrs. Sterling. I've seen profound betrayal. But what your husband did... She shook her head. That is a special kind of cruelty. You were so brave to find this, and we will ensure he is held accountable. Marcus Sterling was served that night. David was the one who broke the news to Chloe. After his own contacts, confirmed the papers had been served. The whole thing happened during his bid for a new round of funding, David explained. Marcus was on a live-streamed panel about corporate ethics when it all came crashing down. The look on his face went viral. He was completely stunned. The immediate charges were conspiracy and reckless endangerment, with more to follow once the environmental tests were confirmed. Liam's smile was grim. His father's PR team was already spinning, but this was too big. The paper trail was absolute. For a fleeting second, Clara felt a surge of hope. Marcus was caught. The evidence was irrefutable. Justice felt possible. Cradling her infant son, Oliver, she believed the ordeal was ending. She was deeply wrong. The Kensington family's retaliation came exactly 1 week later. Clara was at Liam's waterfront condo, recovering and tending to her newborn. Just as Oliver drifted off to sleep, Liam appeared, his face stone cold, holding a thick legal envelope. A courier dropped this off, Liam said, his voice devoid of emotion. From a firm on State Street, Thorne and Associates. Clara's hands went cold as she reached for it. She recognized the name. They were the firm Boston's elite hired when ethics were an obstacle. Their specialty was making messy situations disappear. She tore the seal, her brain refusing to process the text. What is it? Liam pressed, his expression hardening. Clara, you look like you've seen a ghost. Tell me what's happening. They want him, Clara whispered, her voice a hollow echo. Marcus's parents. They are petitioning for sole custody of Oliver. For what reason? They're arguing I'm mentally unstable, a threat to my own child. The documents shook in her trembling hands. They included reports from doctors I don't even know, and a signed affidavit from Chloe, claiming I was volatile throughout the pregnancy. Her voice cracked. Liam grabbed the folder, his eyes flashing with fury as he read, his jaw tightened. This is pure fiction, he said, his tone like ice. Paid-off shrinks and a perjured statement. This is how the rich rewrite reality. Can they win? Can they actually take my son? They can start a fire, Liam replied, his eyes like steel. But I'll be the one to bring the storm. Clara saw the chilling certainty in his gaze. The Kensingtons had endless influence. Their attorneys built narratives for a living. The city's powerful owed them favors. She was nobody. No career, no savings, just a kind friend giving her a place to stay. It gets worse, Liam said quietly. They are moving to have your entire case dismissed. They're claiming you fabricated the environmental reports in a jealous fit over Chloe. That's absurd. The server logs prove. Their hired gun will say it's a sophisticated deepfake. Their paid witnesses will say you were the one having an affair. They're positioning you as a scorned woman seeking revenge after he left you. But none of it is true. To people like them, truth is a negotiable asset. Liam set the papers aside. The only thing that matters is the version they sell the judge. With their kind of money, any fiction can become fact. Clara collapsed into the sofa, holding Oliver, who slept peacefully, ignorant of the war that had just been declared over him. What can I do? Clara asked, her voice a faint whisper. I can't fight them alone. You have me. Liam's eyes met hers. You have my resources, my connections, and my attorneys, who are the most ruthless litigators in Massachusetts. His certainty was a lifeline. They wanted a fight. We'll give them total war. Why are you doing this? It's too much. It will drain your time and money. You don't even know me. Because it's right, Liam said, his voice softening. Because you showed up in my life when I saw everything as a transaction. Because watching you protect your son reminds me of what truly matters. He gently touched Oliver's small hand. And because this little boy needs a mother who loves him, not grandparents who see him as a corporate heir. Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks. Thank you, she choked out. I can't ever repay you. Win this for me, Alex interrupted, rising to his feet. I need to make some calls. The hearing is in 3 days. We need to get ready for battle. The law office felt frigid and imposing. Glass walls offered sweeping city views, framing minimalist furniture, and an air of quiet menace. A long, sterile conference table looked like a future battlefield. Clara sat beside her new lawyer, Maya Singh, a woman Liam had on speed dial. Maya was a legal titan, famous for dismantling tech monopolies in court. Clara prayed she lived up to the hype. Across town, Marcus Kensington's parents, Harrison and Eleanor, were plotting their attack. Harrison, a more brutal version of his son, radiated absolute authority. Eleanor was a monument to old money, dressed in designer clothes like armor. They were surrounded by corporate lawyers, sharks who treated this not as a family dispute, but as a hostile takeover. Marcus was sequestered, his family's team managing the PR fallout, and Chloe was present, playing the role of the supportive partner, her hand on her stomach, a portrait of calculated vulnerability that made Clara's stomach turn. Let us proceed, the judge's voice cut through the tension. She faced the room. We are hearing an emergency petition for custody of Oliver Kensington, filed by his paternal grandparents. They are seeking guardianship pending the outcome of the criminal charges against the father, Marcus Kensington. She glanced at Maya. The petition claims my client is mentally unfit, yet offers zero credible medical evidence. Your Honor, the opposing counsel cut in, we have submitted statements from 3 distinguished psychologists. I have read them, the judge replied, and I note that all 3 serve on the Kensington Foundation's board. The lawyer's smile didn't falter. Our experts have impeccable reputations. Their conflict of interest is my concern, not their credentials. The judge turned to Maya. Miss Singh, your response. Maya rose, her authority palpable. Your Honor, my client requests a comprehensive evaluation by a psychiatrist appointed by this court. She has zero to hide. She is a devoted mother who survived a direct attempt on her child's life, and now she endures a second assault. The petitioners allege my client is unstable. Your Honor, the petitioners are manufacturing a fantasy. Maya's voice was sharp as glass. And we have proof. Her assistant distributed tablets. This demonstrates a pattern of Marcus Kensington's abuse, financial control, isolation, and poisoning her with industrial toxins to induce a miscarriage. Objection, the other lawyer shouted. These are baseless accusations. They are documented realities, Maya countered. We have the full toxicology reports. We also have a sworn deposition from the lead contractor. These environmental reports confirm the second opinion Clara secured from an independent specialist. Your Honor, this is a methodical assassination of her character. Their client is attempting to steal a newborn from his mother to evade responsibility for his own felonies. Maya's voice was like stone. Let me be clear. Marcus Kensington tried to terminate this pregnancy. When that did not work, his family initiated a smear campaign to destroy her reputation. They bought fraudulent medical opinions, and now they petition this court to endorse their deception by handing them an infant who needs his mother. Clara is unemployed and without a stable home. Clara is with a friend while recovering from being poisoned, Maya retorted, facing the judge. Your Honor, I wish to call a witness who will speak to my client's stability and her fitness as a parent. Proceed. Call your witness. The defense calls Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans appeared on the stand, his simple attire and calm demeanor, a stark contrast to the power suits around him. Maya guided him through the harrowing final weeks of the pregnancy, the mysterious sickness, the premature delivery, the high-risk birth, and the infant's fight to survive. And in your medical judgment, Dr. Evans, how did Clara manage this ordeal? With remarkable strength, Dr. Evans stated, his voice clear. I have practiced for 2 decades and have seen individuals crumble under much less pressure. Clara was determined. She adhered to every instruction. She fought for her son even as her own health was failing. A fragile person would have shattered. She did not. And what have you observed in her interactions with her son after his birth? She is nurturing, attentive, and entirely capable. That baby is thriving, Dr. Evans said, looking directly at the judge. He is gaining weight ahead of the schedule for a preemie. He is meeting every developmental milestone. His voice grew firmer. He has bonded with his mother precisely as a healthy infant should. To remove him from her care would be deeply traumatic. I would bet my medical license on that fact. The Kensington family attorneys tried to dismantle Dr. Evans on cross-examination. They pointed out that he was a general physician, not a world-renowned neonatologist. They insinuated his personal involvement in the case clouded his objectivity. They hinted that he was being compensated for his testimony. Dr. Evans calmly deflected each volley. I am the one who ordered the toxic substance screening that saved that child's life. Her voice became sharp. His mother nearly died bringing him into this world, and you claim I am unfit? The legal team retreated. Next, Maya presented a friend who testified to Clara's unwavering dedication. A court-appointed psychologist affirmed her mental stability. The opposition began to look agitated. We call Chloe Vance to the stand, their lawyer declared. Clara's stomach dropped. Chloe approached the stand, her expression a careful performance of sorrow. Did you engage in a relationship with Mr. Kensington? The lawyer began. Yes, Chloe whispered, feigning deep remorse. She learned about it 6 months ago. What was her reaction? He asked. Uncontrolled fury, Chloe claimed. At a museum gala, she completely lost it. She was screaming, and she hurled a champagne flute. Security had to remove her. Objection! That is a complete and utter lie, Maya shouted. The judge permitted it to stand, but cautioned Chloe about the consequences of perjury. Her composure faltered for a second. He called me later, terrified. Chloe continued, now crying. He told me she vowed to destroy him. I am worried for that baby. Elena stood, her posture radiating confidence. This awards dinner was on February 10th, correct? Yes. Fascinating, Elena said, sliding a folder across the table. Because on that date, Mr. Vance's private jet filed a flight plan to Aspen, not Denver. Maya's composure faltered. I must have my cities mixed up. You have more than your cities mixed up, Elena stated coolly. Are you aware that lying under oath is a felony? Objection, shouted Leo's lawyer. Were you instructed by the Vance family to fabricate this narrative? Elena continued. Maya cracked, her eyes darting to Leo's father in the gallery, who stared back blankly. She glanced at Clara, who was cradling her son. A flicker of guilt crossed her face. I think I should speak to my attorney, she stammered. Motion to strike her entire testimony, Elena said. Granted, the judge ruled. Miss Reyes, you can expect a call from the district attorney's office regarding this matter. The decision was swift. The petitioner's request for emergency custody is baseless. The motion is denied. Clara felt a wave of relief so strong her knees went weak. However, the judge continued, I am mandating a 90-day review of the parental situation. The child will remain with Miss Vance with scheduled oversight. I expect full cooperation. I couldn't just cast her aside. I made a mistake, and I tried to hide it from you. His voice cracked. I had my mother create a trust for the child. She handled it like a corporate buyout, trying to bury a secret heir to the Vance fortune. He looked at her, his humiliation plain to see. Our attorneys managed the fallout, but the story was set. The gossip was that the child was mine, and I'd tried to pay my way out of it. The board of directors never saw me the same way after that. Even my own father questioned my fitness to lead the company. He laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. That's why our public image became everything to me. It wasn't pride, it was fear. The idea that my mentors thought I would abandon my own child. Clara processed his confession, a critical piece of her own story falling into place. Why wouldn't you tell me this? She whispered. Because I was terrified. Ethan's voice was strained. I worried you'd judge me like everyone else. That the trust would be gone forever. The trust left the room yesterday, Ethan. I know. I earned that. He rose to his feet. Ava, that part of my life was finished before we began. I love you. Only you. I tried to clean up my own mess, and the failure has been a private hell. She thought of her grandfather, a man whose lies came as easily as breathing. Was Ethan just better at faking his remorse? But she saw the genuine pain in his eyes, the slight tremble in his hands. Her grandfather was never rattled. He was always composed and distant. He never appeared weak because he never believed he was. This felt different. This was raw anguish. I believe you, Ava said, her voice barely a whisper. But my family was built on secrets. I refuse to live that way. If there is anything else, you tell me now. There's nothing. I swear on my life. Then this is our new beginning. Complete transparency, she declared, her gaze unwavering. Can you promise me that? Yes, Ethan exhaled, his voice heavy with relief. I promise. She gave a slow, deliberate nod. Their foundation was fractured, but maybe not beyond repair. The process would be agonizingly slow. Fine, she conceded. We put this behind us. He moved across the room, taking her hands as if they were a lifeline. Thank you, he whispered, for hearing me out, for giving us a chance. Don't make me regret this. I won't. I swear it. They stood in the quiet morning glow, facing the long road to rebuilding what they'd lost. A few weeks later, Chloe appeared. Ava was arranging the nursery when the doorman buzzed, his voice tight with anxiety. You have a guest, he said carefully. She claims it's an emergency, but I thought it best to check with you first. Who is it? His hesitant pause was all the answer she needed. Ava's first instinct was to refuse, to banish the woman who represented Ethan's betrayal. Yet, the doorman's caution made her hesitate. She looks scared to death, he added softly, and she came by herself. Ava looked toward the bassinet, a serene anchor in her suddenly turbulent life. Send her up, she instructed. Have security remain on the floor. Chloe looked broken when she arrived, a stark contrast to the polished woman in the file, and she was visibly pregnant. Thank you for seeing me, Chloe said, her voice hoarse. I have no right to be here, after everything. You helped him deceive me. Yes, Chloe's eyes filled with tears. I did, and I am so sorry. But that's not why I'm here. Then why are you? Chloe shot a nervous look down the hallway before turning back, her voice dropping to a terrified whisper. Because I'm afraid Catherine Davenport is going to have me killed. Ava was speechless. It was the last thing she could have imagined. What are you talking about? The Davenports, Ethan's mother, Catherine. Chloe's composure crumbled entirely, her words shaking. When the waterfront deal hit a snag, she decided I was the problem, a liability to be handled. She clutched her stomach. Ethan called me. He told me if I made any noise, I'd be gone. He said it so casually, like he was ordering a coffee. Ethan makes empty threats. Perhaps, Chloe whispered. But his mother doesn't. She told Ava about a young city planner who had filed a harassment claim against Ethan years before. Her entire employee record was scrubbed after she accepted a settlement. A former colleague found the archived personnel files. The payout wasn't the last of it, Chloe explained, the story rushing out. 2 months later, the planner was dead. A tragic fall on an icy sidewalk during a nor'easter. The official ruling was accidental. A chilling unease settled over Ava. Are you implying Ethan had something to do with it? I have no proof, but the Davenports have a very long reach. Chloe shook her head. I actually believed I was different. He swore he loved me, that you were a temporary complication, that we would start our real life once you were gone. Her laugh was hollow. What a fool I was. He used me. Now I'm pregnant with his child, and he's still finding new ways to threaten me. So why come to me? Because I brought insurance. From her bag, Chloe pulled out a small memory stick. Copies of emails, offshore account details, audio files. It's Ethan's entire playbook for covering his tracks, including Catherine's strategies to protect him. Ava accepted the drive. Why not take this to the police? I was terrified. I thought being connected to him offered some protection. Chloe's voice cracked. I finally understood they would never keep me safe. I was a problem he needed to solve. Permanently. Her gaze met Ava's, filled with pure terror. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I helped him do this to you, but I'm going to be a mother. I'm scared for my son, the same way you're scared for yours. She pointed to the drive. Everything needed to expose them is on here. The cooked books, the plans to discredit you. They had backup plans in case any of this became public. What sort of plans? Chloe paused, and her next words were like ice. They discussed arranging an accident, something that would seem random, with no ties back to them. The fear in Ava's stomach solidified into a cold dread. They were planning to kill me. They need you, out of the picture, one way or another, Chloe confirmed, wiping away a tear. When Ethan started making vague threats toward me, I knew it wasn't just talk. What they were willing to do to you, they would do to me. Ava stared at the small device in her hand. What do you want from me? Nothing, Chloe replied. I just want to take my son and vanish before they decide I know too much. And I needed to apologize for my part in this, for buying into Ethan's lies, for helping him wreck your life. She glanced toward the nursery, her face etched with regret. I told myself you had it coming. It was easier than admitting what I was a part of. A sob broke free. I am so sorry, Ava. Ava looked at Chloe, the woman who had colluded with Ethan to shatter their marriage. She had anticipated feeling fury, but instead felt a wave of pity. This was another life chewed up by the Davenport dynasty, another terrified mother trying to protect her child. My guest apartment, Ava said, surprising herself. It's empty and secure. You can hide there while we sort through this. Chloe's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. You would help me? I'm helping your son, Ava corrected her, her tone resolute. He is just as innocent as my own child. He will not carry the blame for his father's sins. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just open that drive and let's hope it's enough to burn their whole world down. The contents of the drive were a waking nightmare. Encrypted exchanges between Ethan and his father detailed how to handle the Ava situation. Memos to fixers and discreet attorneys were phrased with corporate jargon but dripped with menace. Financial trails led to shell corporations with payouts that coincided with the dates that problematic individuals had vanished. The most damning evidence was a series of voice memos between Ethan and his mother, Catherine, outlining a final plan if the divorce proceedings got too loud. We can manage it, Catherine's collected voice said in one clip. It must be clean, with no loose ends. A car malfunction, a robbery that goes wrong. These things are arranged all the time. What about the baby? Ethan asked. The baby is a Davenport. He will be raised by us, of course, after his mother's unfortunate accident. Accident. The word echoed in Ava's mind. Her entire existence reduced to a problem needing a solution. Her attorney, Daniel, sat beside her, his expression grim. This is conspiracy to commit murder, he stated. It's a direct plot. They are discussing your death as if it's a business negotiation. The question is, what we do next. Ava shut the laptop, gripping it tightly. I can go to the district attorney. That's an incredible risk. The Davenports have ties all over the city. What if someone in that office makes a phone call? Daniel warned. We need to be smarter. We back this up everywhere. Multiple cloud accounts, hard copies. We'll implement a dead man's switch. If anything happens to you, these files are sent to every major news organization in the country. If anything happens to me. A shiver traced its way down Ava's spine. Do you think they would really go through with it? I think desperate people do desperate things, and the Davenports are on the verge of losing everything, Daniel answered. The zoning vote for the waterfront project is in 3 weeks. A scandal of this magnitude would torpedo the deal. Their company would be ruined. Their name would be toxic. Their entire legacy is built on an illusion of untouchable power. For people like them, losing that image is worse than death, so they'd kill to preserve it. Absolutely. Ava looked at the laptop. Such a small object, holding the key to destroying an empire. Then that's what we do, she declared. Not just for the vote, for all of it. We expose every lie, every crime. We let the world see who the Davenports really are. That is a massive gamble. If they find out you plan to go public before you're ready, then I need to be faster, Ava cut in, getting to her feet. I am done being their victim. I am finished waiting for their next move. They tried to destroy me emotionally. They tried to paint me as an unfit mother to take my child. Now they are planning my death to protect their bottom line. She looked at Daniel, her sole trusted ally. I have been through hell to protect my son. I will walk through it again, but this time they are not going to win. The confrontation came 3 days before the scheduled data leak. Ava was leaving a strategy session at Daniel's office. Her son was secure at her condo, with her sister watching over him. The afternoon light threw long shadows across Boston's financial district. She was mentally rehearsing her statement, imagining the cold fury in Ethan's eyes. She paid no attention to the Blacktown car that glided to a stop beside her. The first tap from behind was gentle. Irritated, she started to pull to the curb, but a second vehicle immediately blocked her in. The driver of the town car emerged, moving with a calm, deliberate purpose. For a second, Ava froze. She watched him approach her car. He was a complete stranger, but he projected an air of cold professionalism. "Mrs. Davenport," he said, his voice even. "A moment of your time?" Ava's hand shot toward her purse. She had to dial Daniel, the police, anyone. But the man was already at her window, presenting his own phone. It displayed a live video of her sister pushing her son on a swing in a nearby playground. "I would strongly advise against that," he said smoothly. "This can be handled very quietly. Get in the car. We have papers for you to sign and need your new address." "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, please," Diana scoffed. "Donovan has been paying your bills, the apartment, the monthly transfers. We simply need to know the location of our heir. If something happens to me, the blueprints go public. The blueprints, your final desperate move." Diana seemed unmoved. "So predictable. You're not disappearing. We're going to talk, and then you'll sign this NDA." "Never." "You will," her tone turned to ice. "Or we find other leverage. Your father's small firm, for instance. A surprise audit could be devastating." The threat to her father turned Clara's fear into cold fury. "Harm my family," she said, her voice a low hiss, "and I will destroy you. I'll bring the whole Sinclair name down in flames. I'll show this city the fraud your dynasty is built on." Diana chuckled. "Bold words for someone with nothing. Bold words for a woman who has nothing left." Clara held Diana's stare. "I lost my job. The father of my son fired me to cover his tracks." Her voice was steel. "Your threats are meaningless. Your fortune is worthless. I carried this baby by myself. I fought your legal team by myself. I secretly outmaneuvered your entire family to protect my son's legacy." A sharp, chilling smile crossed her face, making Diana flinch. "So go on. Try something. Let's see how Boston reacts when the original blueprints for the Sinclair Tower are released. When the city finds out the Sinclairs tried to bury the architect who can prove their new skyscraper is a death trap." The air in the car grew thick. Diana's knuckles were white on her clutch. Clara's heart hammered, but her expression was unreadable. Finally, Diana rose. "This is far from over," she hissed. "No," Clara said softly, "it's not. But by the end, you and Donovan will be ruined. I guarantee it." The sedan screeched away into the flow of traffic. Clara collapsed into her seat, trembling uncontrollably. Her hands shook as she dialed the only person she could count on. "They know where I am," she told Mark, "right outside my apartment. They tried to make me sign an NDA. Are you hurt?" "No, just shaken. They knew everything, but I'm okay." She inhaled sharply. "Mark, they went after my father. They threatened his company." "A car is on its way. Meet me at my firm. You'll be safe there." "It won't be enough. They won't stop." Clara watched the city lights blur. "We have to act tonight before they make another move." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm sending the Boston Globe everything. The original plans, the internal memos, every last file." Her resolve was absolute. They wanted to handle this quietly. "I'm going to make it a public spectacle. Let Boston see what the Sinclairs really are. That's a massive risk. Once it's out there, it's out there. Good. I want it all to come crashing down. Claire's hand tightened on her phone. For months, they've used their influence to bully me. They tried to make me think I was crazy. That ends now. Tonight, the city gets the real story. A beat of silence. My guy at the Globe will run this, Mark said. It can be the lead story by dawn. Make the call. You're sure? This is the point of no return. Clara recalled Donovan calling her delusional. She thought of the doctored engineering reports his father created to discredit her. She pictured Diana sneering about her baby. I'm absolutely positive. The article went live at 5 a.m. and hit the city like an earthquake. The Boston Globe's servers overloaded. The city's powerful elite were in shock. The headline was devastating. Sinclair Tower, a death trap built on fraud. The report detailed years of malfeasance. From Mark's office, Clara saw the story explode. Images of the faked blueprints showed criminal negligence. Donovan's messages on how to deal with Clara were published. Diana was on record approving funds for intimidation. Their legal team's memos outlined a plan to have her institutionalized. Experts furiously debated the charges. Wall Street analysts forecast the ruin of Sinclair Holdings. And woven through it all was Clara's account, narrated with the help of a star reporter. The doctored plans, the humiliating firing, the hospital stay where stress nearly took her son, his birth, the fight for custody, the intruder. She laid it all out. Every threat, every lie, every act of defiance. And Boston was listening. By 9 a.m., the hashtag Sinclair Scandal was trending. By midday, news vans swarmed Sinclair Plaza. When the market closed, his stock had flatlined. Donovan Sinclair released a denial, citing a disgruntled former architect, verified wire transfers, proved him a liar within 60 minutes. His mother, Diana Sinclair, was met by federal investigators at a fundraiser. Her attorneys could do nothing. And Donovan, inside his penthouse office, was placed on a 72-hour psychiatric hold after smashing the windows, screaming that he was above the law. Clara's fight was not over. The evening before her hearing, she paced her apartment. Owen was asleep, the city lights shimmering below. At dawn, she would confront them before the state board. Mark found her staring out at 3 a.m. Can't sleep either, he murmured. All I see is his face. The look he gave me when he fired me. Like I was nothing. Clara hugged herself tightly. What if they say I'm lying? What if they say the original blueprints are fakes? What if he wins and I lose Owen? Mark put a hand on her shoulder. Remember telling me their lawyers couldn't break us? That the truth is indestructible? Yes? Well, here we are. Tomorrow is your word against their power, your proof against their name, your strength against his arrogance. He squeezed her shoulder. You aren't the young architect he hired. You are not the woman they tried to bury. You're the mother who saved her son and uncovered a conspiracy. I don't feel that strong. I'm terrified. You can be both, Mark said gently. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of it. Clara rested her head on his shoulder, drawing on his calm resolve. You'll be there? Every minute. Right behind you. Always. They stood together as the darkness over Boston gave way to dawn. Clara inhaled slowly, squared her shoulders, and readied herself for what came next. The hearing began on a rainy Wednesday, the storm beating against the chamber windows. Clara was at the table by 10:15. She wore a simple dark dress, her hair pulled back. Owen was secure with Mark's family and a private guard. The chief counsel, Miss Reed, walked her through the timeline, discovering the structural flaws in the plans, Donovan's volatile reaction, the false breach of contract used for her termination, and her escape with the proof. Clara's voice was steady and clear, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. She had to make the board see the truth in her words, the conviction in her gaze. What happened after Sinclair Associates fired you? Miss Reed asked. I disappeared. Mark found a secure location. My son came early. The doctors said it was caused by extreme duress. We both almost died. And the baby? Owen arrived that night. He was small but a fighter. The NICU team called him their little champion. Objection! Donovan's lawyer snapped, on his feet. Her personal health is not relevant. Overruled, the commissioner replied curtly. Given the circumstances, it is highly relevant, Miss Reed continued. Miss Hayes, after Owen was born, did the intimidation continue? It did. Clara met the eyes of each board member. Donovan Sinclair's mother filed a frivolous suit to take my son, citing a fabricated mental health report. When the court threw it out, they hired a man to break into my home. He told me he'd hurt my child if I didn't give him the original blueprints proving the fraud. Objection. That's unsubstantiated. It's a verified fact, Miss Reed countered, gesturing to a screen. Here are the wire transfers, a sworn confession, and the data linking the intruder to the Sinclair family's chief of security for the last 15 years. Julian's attorney sank into his seat, his face pale. Ilara, the journalist asked, why leak the server data instead of going to the FB1? This was the question she'd practiced. Because I was afraid, she stated. The Croft Tech empire is a behemoth in Seattle. Their influence is absolute. They crush startups and end careers overnight. I heard Julian and his mother discuss how to ruin me. She faced the panel directly. I sent that ledger to the press, so the world would be my witness. So they couldn't just erase the truth. Her tone hardened. And so Julian would know I was no longer his victim. You can't just delete a person. The truth outlasts their code and their power. The room was utterly still. Even Julian's lawyers were speechless. The reporter simply nodded. The cross-examination began, with the lawyer looking defeated before he even spoke. Miss Vance, your relationship with my client was failing, true? My relationship failed because Julian is a sociopath who steals data for profit. Ilara's voice was frigid. He cut me off from my friends. He controlled my finances. He messed with my medication to make me doubt my sanity. Once he found a new accomplice, he planned to discard me. That's your opinion? No, that's a verifiable fact. The evidence speaks for itself. Decrypted logs, offshore payment routes, shell corporations, and audio recordings. Argue if you want, counselor, but the digital footprint is permanent. Julian Croft tried to ruin me. I only got out because my friend Leo intervened. The lawyer pivoted, calling her unstable, and the data faked. Ilara calmly dismantled every single one of his claims. He finally surrendered. No more questions. She walked past Julian without a glance and left the building, with her head high, never looking back. The panel made their decision in under 3 hours. Ilara was at Leo's apartment when he called. She was in the spare room, rocking her son Finn, when her phone lit up. Prosecution recommended on all counts, Leo said, his voice cracking with relief. Wire fraud, conspiracy, witness tampering. Everything stuck. Ilara let the words sink in. Justice. The facts had finally won. What about his parents? Indictments are coming for them too. The state's case is solid. His father was in on the fraud. His mother is facing an obstruction charge because of those recordings. The whole Croft empire is imploding, Ilara. All of it. And Julian's sentence? The hearing is next month, but they're pushing for 40 years. Given the evidence, Leo paused. He's not getting out, Ilara. He will die in prison. She looked down at Finn, asleep in her arms, oblivious to the chaos he was born into. It's done, she whispered. Yeah, Leo said gently. It's finally done. You did it. After the call, Ilara sat in the quiet, listening to her son's soft breathing. She felt a peace she thought was gone for good. Leo found her there a moment later. He saw the press conference, he said softly. It's everywhere. I know. How are you, really? She thought about it. How did she feel after it all? Hollow, she admitted. Like I've been fighting a hurricane that just finally moved on. Leo sat with her, watching Finn. So, what's next, he asked. I rebuild, she said, resting her head on his shoulder. I'm launching my own data consulting firm. Then I'm finding us our own place. I'm going to raise my son and be the analyst I was before Julian tried to destroy me. You can stay here, Leo offered. This place is huge. You and Finn have everything you need. Leo, Ilara smiled at him. Are you asking me to move in with you and your husband? He looked at her earnestly. I'm asking you to let us help you, just for a while. His voice softened. These last few months, watching you fight this, seeing your strength, it's been amazing. My parents would have been so proud of you. I know it's a strange thing to say, but I think it all the time. They would see what I see in you. A decent person, someone worth fighting for. Alex, I can't. I know what you've been through. You need to heal, but I'm staying. This cafe is my home. We're in this together if you want. A warmth spread through Alara, not pity, but gratitude, and maybe a sliver of hope. I'm not ready, she whispered. I don't know if I can trust anyone like that again. I get it, but I'm not going anywhere. She looked around the small cafe, her safe haven. This is real. You're real. For now, that might be enough. I can work with that, Alex said, his smile genuine. Good. Ilara kissed his cheek. Now go manage your baristas. You've ignored your precious espresso machine all day for me. He chuckled and stood up. He paused by the door. My late wife, she would have liked you. I wish I'd met her. I think you have, in a way. He glanced around the room, then at the woman who had survived a monster. I think she was waiting for this place to feel right again. A few months after Julian Croft's fall, Sasha gave birth to a boy she named Noah, a name with no link to the Croft legacy, meaning rest and comfort, a new beginning. Ilara met her at Green Lake a day later, her heart a knot of pity and residual anger for the other woman. He's lovely, Ilara said. He looks like you. Sasha's voice was empty. I pray that's all he gets from his father. Our sons are not their fathers. Finn isn't Julian, and Noah won't be either. Not with you as his mother. Sasha stared at her. How can you say that to me? Because he used you, too. He made us rivals in a game he rigged from the start. I found out from a server log. You found out from a subpoena. I should have realized, perhaps. But you told the truth. Your testimony was critical. You turned on his associates. You helped ensure he can't hurt anyone else. Sasha managed a weak, tired smile. That was brave, Ilara. Honestly, it was the least I could do. Then let's call it a start. They sat in the park, two women connected by one man's evil, both starting over. I'm moving to Portland, Sasha said. My sister has a small PR firm there. It's a chance to disappear. That sounds like a good plan. Will you? Sasha faltered. Tell Finn about Noah one day? They're brothers, after all. Ilara thought for a moment. Two boys, innocent of their father's sins, who deserved a chance at a life. When they're old enough to understand, she said. When they can choose what that means. Yes, I'll tell him he has a brother. Sasha's eyes welled with tears. Thank you. For everything. For not ruining me when you could have. That's just being a decent person. But I wasn't. I was his other woman. You were never the problem, Sasha. You were just another asset for Julian Croft to acquire. Ilara reached out and gently touched Sasha's hand. We'll never be friends. But our sons connect us, and so does surviving him. That has to mean something. Sasha nodded, unable to speak. Ilara stood. Take care of yourself, Sasha, and give Noah the safe and loving childhood Julian denied both our kids. I will. I promise. Ilara walked away into the clear afternoon light. The world kept spinning, even though hers had stopped. She found Ethan near the aging barrels, his smile a small comfort. How was it? She's holding on. Scared, but holding on. Olivia sank onto a wooden bench. She's moving to Seattle. A fresh start. It's for the best. I think so. Olivia hesitated. She asked me to tell Sophie about her brother one day. And what did you say? I told her I would. The kids aren't responsible for their father's mess. Ethan nodded. My late wife would have agreed. You speak of her so fondly. With nothing but love, he confirmed. You're not like her at all. She was a gentle melody. You're different. Forged in fire, and stronger than you realize. Is that a good thing? It's the truth, and a deep compliment. He knelt before her, taking her hands. I adored my wife. When she passed, I thought that chapter of my life was permanently closed. I thought I'd just be a ghost haunting this vineyard with her memory. But recently, I'm starting to believe she was right about what comes after. I want her to know I found a new reason, that this place finally feels like home again. Ethan, I'm not expecting anything, she whispered, her hands gripping his. I know you're still healing, but you have to see my side. When I see you, I don't see a widower. I see a man who rebuilt his world. I'm thankful every single day that I ended up here. Olivia felt that old familiar burn in her eyes. Gratitude, fear, and a tiny spark of hope. I'm just so scared, she confessed. Scared to trust anyone. Scared my own judgment is shot. I know. She drew a wobbly breath. But I am so tired of being afraid. Tired of my ex-husband's shadow dictating my choices. I want something real, Ethan. I just don't know where to begin. Then we'll learn. Together. Ethan squeezed her hands. No expectations. Just two survivors of a storm, deciding to walk toward the sunshine. Olivia let out a laugh, tears rolling down her cheeks. That was surprisingly poetic. I've been practicing, he chuckled. My sister says I need to up my game if I want to win you over. She's got opinions on the matter. Chloe wants us to be together. Chloe has wanted us together since the second day you were here. Her hints are as subtle as a tractor. I think her text last night was, Ethan, for the love of God, just ask her out. This is agonizing to watch. Olivia's laugh was richer this time, a sound that finally felt liberated. Well, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. We shouldn't keep Chloe in suspense. Absolutely not. She'd never let me hear the end of it. She closed the distance and kissed him. It started soft, a gentle inquiry. It deepened into an answer as he kissed her back. When they parted, both were smiling. So what's the plan? She asked. Now, we follow your lead. We build this. Your way. Olivia stood, taking his hand. But first, I think your sister mentioned something about dinner being ready, and I'm suddenly starving. Always the practical one. One of us has to be. They walked to the main house hand in hand. Through the window, the lights of San Francisco glittered across the bay. The vineyard truly felt like a home, filled with light, warmth, and the soft sounds of Sophie breathing on the baby monitor. It was no fairy tale. Life rarely was. But it was a new beginning, a real one, built on truth, and the painful lesson learned from betrayal. For Olivia, that was better than any fantasy. The anniversary dinner was Ethan's idea. 1 year since Olivia fled her penthouse and found a safe place at his vineyard. 1 year since their lives collided. It was a day worth remembering. The private tasting room looked perfect. Bouquets of wildflowers stood against old stone walls. A long table was set for their friends. Fairy lights were draped from the wooden beams, casting a gentle glow. Olivia stood by the window, taking in her new life. Her lawyer, Kate, was chatting with one of Ethan's distributors. Her therapist, Anya, was laughing with a small group. A few of the vineyard staff, who had become like family, milled about. Sophie navigated the floor with fierce determination. At 14 months, she had a will Olivia knew all too well. Mama, Sophie demanded, hugging Olivia's leg. Cake. Soon, sweetie. We have to wait for everyone. Cake now, Olivia laughed, lifting her into her arms. You are 100% my daughter. She's definitely got her mother's spirit. Ethan appeared with 2 glasses of sparkling cider. That level of willpower is inherited. Are you calling me stubborn? I'm calling you resilient. It's one of the best things about you. He kissed her, handing her a glass. To 1 year. To 1 year. Olivia clinked her glass against his. And to many more. They had been together for 6 months, carefully building something from the wreckage of their pasts. It was slow work. For Olivia, learning to trust was a daily practice. But their quiet, steady kindness was laying a foundation stronger than anything they'd known before. Ethan's sister, Chloe, came from the kitchen, beaming at the scene she had helped orchestrate. After the plates were cleared, Chloe whispered, Isn't it time for a speech? A speech? Olivia's heart jumped. I didn't prepare anything. You don't need notes, just speak from the heart, she said, taking a sleepy Sophie from Olivia's arms. I've got her. You go. Before Olivia could argue, Ethan was guiding her to the head of the long table. The happy chatter faded as their friends looked toward her with warm smiles. She looked at the faces of her new family, a stark contrast to the cold, glass-walled apartment overlooking the bay where her old world had shattered. Taking a breath, she started. Just over a year ago, my life completely fell apart. The table fell silent. I was sitting on my office floor, looking at an email on my husband's tablet. It wasn't the hidden bank accounts that destroyed me. It was the invoice from a designer for millions in furniture for a waterfront penthouse I never knew existed. He was constructing an entirely different existence. She looked up, meeting Ethan's supportive gaze. I had lost everything I believed was real. And then, a man who owns a vineyard saw me having a breakdown in a cafe and gave me a quiet place to breathe. When my daughter was born, 2 days later, she came into a world where an entire community was already there to catch her. Olivia's voice gained strength. This past year has changed everything for me. I learned family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. I learned strength isn't about never breaking, but about how you put yourself back together. And I learned that your worst moment can be the start of something true if you're brave enough to rebuild. Her eyes met Ethan's. His were shining. I also learned that real love isn't a fairy tale. It's messy and terrifying, and you might get your heart broken. But it's the reason for nights like this, with people who chose to be here, in a future I could never have imagined. A life that felt impossible 12 months ago. She lifted her glass. So this is to vineyards, to strangers who become family, to babies who become your guide, and to all of you who helped me escape a prison of lies and find the only real home I've ever had. To Olivia. The toast was repeated as glasses clinked. She stepped down from the platform and went straight into Ethan's arms. That was perfect, he murmured into her hair. It was just the truth. I know, he said, stepping back. I have something for you. I couldn't wait any longer. He reached into his jacket and took out a small object wrapped in cloth. Olivia's breath hitched. Whoa now, don't jump to conclusions, Ethan said softly. It's not what you think. He gently unwrapped it. Inside, there was no ring, but an old leather-bound book of poems, its pages softened by age. It belonged to my grandfather, he said. He was a poet. He took this with him everywhere. After he passed, I couldn't even look at it. He took Olivia's hand. I'm not giving you a forever promise today. I know that's a loaded word, but I want you to have this, a piece of my family's story, as we start writing our own. Olivia looked at the small book, a piece of a past love, and a sign of a new one growing. It connected the grandfather he missed, the woman she once was, and the man who was healing them both. Are you sure? She asked. It feels priceless. My mother insisted, Ethan said, smiling. She said her dad would have loved you. She also threatened to ruin my best wine if I got scared. Olivia laughed, one happy tear making its way down her cheek. In that case, I would be honored. Of course, Ethan put the book in her hands. The worn cover was warm and solid. I love you, Olivia said, and the words felt right. I love you, Alex. Her voice was confident. I love your wonderful family, your friends, and this amazing, vibrant restaurant. I love the life we are building. I love you too, he said, kissing her softly. You showed me what real love is. I'm thankful for you every day. They stood together at the opening night party, surrounded by the warmth of the community they had built. The evening full of life. Her son's happy babble came from a nearby table, where Alex's sister was making him laugh. And Alara, who had found a devastating betrayal in a Seattle penthouse and clawed her way back from the brink, knew with absolute certainty she was finally home.